react. You whispering my name, thinking I won't be the same. Turn fiction into fact. See what you didn't know, bruises that I'll never show, slipping on your every jab. So tighten up your fist, step into the ring with this. I hope your mama's got your back. First round, you thought you would've knocked me down. Fifth round, bleeding out the side of your mouth. Final round, holding the sound of my name in the crowd. You hit a bus. Oh, 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 oh. You hit a bus. Oh, 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 oh. Just 'cause I took a break, you're making a huge mistake, thinking you can take the throne. Look at you trembling, step into the lion's den. Bet you wish you stayed at home. Begging for mercy underneath your breath when I ain't even sweating yet. My legend's written in the stone, yeah. You're crying Adrian, defeat is now your only friend. Even your mama's gotta know. First round, you thought you would've knocked me down. Fifth round, bleeding out the side of your mouth. Final round, holding the sound of my name in the crowd. You hit a bus. Oh, 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 oh. You hit a bus. Oh, 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 First round, fifth round, final round. Oh, 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 yeah. First round, fifth round, final round. No, 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 no. First round, you thought you would've knocked me down. Fifth round, bleeding out the side of your mouth. Final round, holding the sound of my name in the crowd. You hit a bus. Oh, 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 oh. You hit a bus. Oh, oh, oh,
Good evening, everyone. My name is Nicholas Lamar Suter, and welcome to In Time. There are conversations that really need to be had. They're often the most important conversations, but they're also usually the hardest. And it's been a while since we've really spent a lot of time on Ukraine, and there's a number of reasons for that. The tangerine that's screwing up the entire planet being one of them. What he does affects Ukraine, affects Israel and Palestine, affects Europe, affects absolutely everybody. So we've been focusing on that and unfortunately neglecting some of our Ukrainian friends. Today we've decided to talk about a topic that hasn't been talked about in a while and is one of the most important ones you can talk about. But the reason it's so hard is because it concerns really the suffering of families and of their children. What we're going to do here before we begin is I would like to briefly summarize a article from the Institute for the Study of War. It came out March 24th, 2025, so it is a very recent article entitled, "Putin is Still Stealing Ukrainian Children." Russian President Vladimir Putin invaded Ukraine over 3 years ago with the intent, among other things, of stealing children. Putin launched his imperial conquest first and foremost to dominate the Ukrainian people. He recognized that to deprive Ukraine of its children would be to deprive it of a multi-generational potential. When troops rolled across the border into Ukraine on the night of February 24th, 2022, the groundwork for the massive deportation of Ukrainian children was already in place. Ukrainian human rights activists uncovered Kremlin documents dated February 18th, 2022, which laid out plans to remove Ukrainian children from orphanages in occupied Luhansk and Donetsk oblasts and bring them to Russia under the guise of, quote, humanitarian evacuations, which we all remember, I think. These documents revealed that Russia's plan to target vulnerable Ukrainian children, especially those without parental care, and planned so before the full-scale invasion had even begun. In the subsequent 3 years, Russia has embarked on a Kremlin-directed, deeply institutionalized project to abduct Ukrainian children and forcibly turn them into the next generation of Russians. Ukraine has been able to verify the deportation of 19,456 children to date, although the true figure is likely to be much higher because Russia has targeted vulnerable children without anyone to speak for them. Yale's Humanitarian Research Lab places the number of deported children closer to 35,000 as of March 19th, 2025. And Putin's Children's Rights Commissioner, Maria Lvova Belova, against whom the International Criminal Court issued an arrest warrant in March of 2023 for her role in abducting children, claimed that Russia has accepted 700,000 Ukrainian children between February 2022 and July 2023, a terrifying benchmark for the lengths that Russia is willing to go to rob Ukraine of its own people. Let's see. There's one other. I'm not going to read the entire thing. International law expressly forbids the forcible transfer of children from one group to another for the purposes of destroying in whole or in part the national or a national or ethnic group, and considers these violations as constituent acts of genocide. The crimes against children have been well documented and started before the war. Putin signed a decree in May of 2022 providing for a simplified procedure for the acquisition of Russian citizenship for children from Ukraine who were, quote, left without parental care and incapacitated persons. Children left with, which amounted to the legalization of processing deported Ukrainian children and forcibly granting them Russian citizenship. With the framework laid before the full-scale invasion, the Russian occupation officials have blatantly advertised programs that take Ukrainian children from their homes in occupied Ukraine to Russia under a variety of guises, such as camps for their supported rest, relaxation, and rehabilitation. As of March 19th, Zaporizhzhia Oblast occupation held, let's see, plans to remove some. Well, I think we're going to get to that. All right. So, long story short, they planned, even before this, to take as many children as they could. They built an infrastructure, including the legalization of, or naturalization of these children into Russia, and have been, unfortunately, doing a lot with them. Today, we welcome a guest, Lucy 𝐒𝐻𝐸, to join us to discuss what is happening with Ukrainian children in Russia. Lucy, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me here. Thank you very much. The story of the kidnapping of children is actually a very interesting one because it starts with in 2014, even before that, with a figure that is um, was described as the Russian Mother Teresa, a lady that has been working it. She received international fame for her supporting the homeless, supporting the downtrodden of Russia. She became an official member of the Russian government, and she was responsible for laying down the groundwork, the infrastructural groundwork that enabled Russia to, in an effective way, kidnap children from Ukrainian territories.
And I just,
She died in an accident, and then they mentioned in the article Lvova Belova. I'm never sure how to pronounce her name.
yeah.
The lady that is the representative for the rights of children, that of course also supports and actively takes part in the kidnapping of children. The one who is also there are two arrest warrants currently on Putin himself and on her. But the kidnapping infrastructure was developed by Dr. Liza, the Russian Mother Teresa. There is a whole documentary about her, actually.
All right, real quick, just because we got two super chats. Dunk on you, $20. Working but listening. This is so very important. Thank you, sir. Slava Ukraini. Well, thank you. I'd like to thank Lucy. It was Lucy's idea. Lucy approached us with coming on to discuss this, and I think it's in fact, well, I'll get to that in a second. And also Dunk on You gave us gifted 5 memberships, so thank you, Dunk on You, for your continued support. We really do appreciate it. Broadcast Cat, yeah, that's when you work on In Time, you got to be subtle. You got to move like that. So Lucy, you're actually just back from Ukraine. Is that correct?
Yes, I've returned. Yeah, I've returned very recently. Just a few days ago. Yes, it was just last week I was still in Ukraine doing various type of interviews with mainly with two organizations, Save Ukraine, which focuses on rescuing children, on the children that are in Russia or in occupied territories. They contact the organization and they organize rescue. The intricacies of the rescue operations themselves, of course, are secret because if they spoke about it with journalists or anyone else, it could potentially compromise future rescue operations. But other than that, we know like certain parts of the operations are known, but a lot of them are kept secret. They actually do more than that. They rescue the children, and then after they rescue the children, they give them temporary housing. They have special accommodations for that. They help parents who potentially are in any financial or psychological trouble. They offer them assistance as well in order for them to be able to get back on their feet. So there's a very comprehensive support for the families, not just rescuing, but also the aftercare of the children.
And I think I cut you off. So they started this in 2017.
2014.
The
rescue to Save Ukraine.
No, sorry, the actual kidnappings. Yeah, 2014.
2014. It started from the beginning of the conflict. Yeah. The infrastructure was put in place by the so-called Russian Mother Teresa, who had a very positive international opinion because of her work towards helping the downtrodden, which is sadly her legacy became laying down the groundwork for the kidnapping of children.
So, what is Russia's interest in this? Why they clearly have planned this, and it's not an accident. It's not just an opportunity that arose. It's something that they've been very deliberate about. Why is that, do you think?
Well, there are a couple of reasons. One of them is, of course, because Russia is in a demographic crisis, and rather than try to do any sensible, what's the English word? I'm forgetting. I've been forgetting words lately. Policy. Any sensible policy to combat the demographic crisis that Russia has been, I think, tackling since the 90s, I believe. They kidnap Ukrainian children to basically bolster their numbers. That is a very crude way to say it, but that is actually one of the reasons. The other is, of course, to erase Ukrainian as a people. That is a very common method that is used in war. As we know, Nazi Germany has been doing that en masse towards Polish people, Ukrainian people as well. Slavic people, they've been kidnapped and moved to Nazi Germany to be raised as Germans. My grandfather was actually, in a way, one such child that was kidnapped from Poland and moved into Germany. But in his case, he was moved to a concentration camp along with my great-grandfather, and then adopted, sort of, in a way, rescued from the camp and adopted by a German family.
And the according to Yale University, the numbers of children kidnapped, again, very hard to tell. And Russia has claimed credit for taking 700,000, which is fortunately unlikely that it's that high. Ukraine can only confirm about 20,000. Yale says it's about 35. It's a bit
complicated because both of these numbers in a way are true. 20,000 is true and hundreds of thousands are true, because we have to differentiate two different types of children. And I think a lot of the media does not do a very good work to distinguishing the two different groups of children that are being kidnapped. One is unaccompanied children that don't have any guardians, don't have anyone with them, and that's the 20,000 number of unaccompanied children that don't have anybody, like in the direct vicinity, because a lot of them do have somebody, but they're just not close by. So they are counted as unaccompanied, and they are kidnapped to Russia, right? But there are also accompanied children that are with families, guardians, loved ones, for example, in occupied territories. And they are forcefully, by coercion, moved by Russia into Russia by the hundreds of thousands. So you have to sort of differentiate between these two different groups.
And, of the unaccompanied, the numbers.
And the unaccompanied children are the children that are, sorry to interrupt, those are the children that are basically considered to be to meet the criteria of genocide under the UN Convention of Prevention and Punishment of Genocide.
And those numbers, according to Yale now, equal the number that was taken by Nazi Germany in the Nazification of Poland. Is that accurate?
I think so.
All right.
Which is, of course, why I'm interested in the topic, because it is a little bit personal.
Is Andring, how are you?
I am hot and driving through the middle of nowhere.
At 120 degrees?
No, it's not. It's only 112.
112, my bad.
Yeah.
Did you have any questions, or did you want to sit and listen for a little bit? I don't know how long you had been here, or if there's anything you wanted to ask about.
No, not yet.
Not yet.
Just finally got enough service to actually connect. I've been trying for 15 minutes and it's not been working well.
All right. It's no worries. Lucy was apparently briefly Dylan Burns, is my understanding. I don't know. It's just going to be one of those shows, I guess.
Sorry, what about Dylan Burns?
Somebody in the live chat erroneously claimed that it said Dylan Burns for your name title instead of Lucy. So I don't know why anyone would say that.
I had a name title of Dylan Burns.
No professional show would ever make that mistake. So I don't know that was the rumor. Somebody started it in the live chat. I don't know why, obviously, to make me look foolish.
Vicious slander.
Exactly. You see, his Andring knows what he's talking about.
I see.
So
listen, maybe I just am secretly Dylan Burns.
Yeah.
We have.
So Russia kidnaps these children, and in general, these let's talk about the 20,000. It makes them Russian citizens as quickly as possible. It has an expedited system that it put in place before the war explicitly for doing this. What happens to the children at that point?
When they are kidnapped?
Yes.
They are put there. There are a couple, of course. They are put in the Russian school system. That is very obvious. They are put into adoption, of course. My gosh, so many things happen. Russia, of course, does anything in its power for the children to be not possible to identify, unidentifiable.
To make to make it so that they can't be retrieved, gives them new names, makes it so that their original identities are wiped out.
Their names are changed. Their dates of birth are changed. Interestingly enough, all that is changed. They're put through the Russian school system, of course. The younger the age, the more difficult it is for the organizations such as Save Ukraine to identify them. When you are when you're dealing with infants, it is basically impossible to do so. Like, they are hoping that maybe some AI technology will be able to recognize infant-aged children. But right now, basically, if less than a 3-year-old, 2-year-old, 1-year-old child is kidnapped, it is considered impossible to retrieve that child, basically, because they don't know who they are. They cannot identify themselves. They definitely cannot contact the organization, and they all look very similar at that age.
Well, and 3 years later, even the parents wouldn't be able to identify them after 3 years.
Yeah. So it's difficult. And very early on, the children are peer pressured. Of course, Ukrainian is being mocked. There's a big pressure to just relearn Russian. The children are being told by Russia that they are not really wanted in Ukraine anymore, that their parents have abandoned them, that they have no future in Ukraine, that the only future that they have is in Russia, to learn Russian, to become Russian, and in most cases, when it comes to the boys, to eventually join the Russian army. that is the best trajectory in life for them. And to that effect, they are not just put into the Russian school system, where they learn Russian, where they become Russified effectively, but they are highly encouraged to join Russian military organizations such as the very successful 𝐒𝐴. 𝐒𝐴 is a paramilitary organization for the youth, where they practice and train for their future military service. It is a state organized organization, and which involves high-level celebrities. There's a lot of hype around it. There's a lot of prestige surrounded joining that organization. It is a very, very deliberate system to militarize as many children as possible. And of course, children are, which baffled me the most, which shocked me the most, children, not just kidnapped, but also Russian children, are told, among other things, that World War II never ended and the fight against the Nazis continues.
Yeah, that's the one that's I think that's an evolving narrative, but it's one that really, I mean, it was part of the narrative for the initial invasion was they had to denazify Ukraine. The idea that World War II never ended and that they're really essentially still, dear Lord. How many of these children, if any, are actually being deployed against Ukraine?
Basically, all that finish 18 years old, or rather reach
Jesus.
18 years old, are being asked to join. Children as young as 15 years old already receive summons. You have to prepare for the military. You have to prepare. That is what I've been told by the Save Ukraine organizations, that children as young as 15 already start receiving gentle nudges by the Russian government that it is time to prepare mentally for joining the military. And of course, there are soldiers visiting the school that talk about very prosper, very how lucrative a career being a soldier is, how actually death in the service of the country is not as scary or bad as it might seem, stuff like that.
Well, somebody needs to keep Steven Seagal employed, I guess. Dear Lord. So, in your interviews, what are some of the more shocking things that you've learned? You've already said that, learning that they think that World War II is still going on. What else have you learned in your interviews?
And things like, when it comes to the kidnapped children, things like a girl being, because in some cases these children have relatives in Ukraine and they've been taken to Russia with a living relative, and the relative, for example, died in Russia, and the children are alone, and the Ukrainian relative is trying to retrieve the child to take care of it, and they're not allowed. And for example, one girl was told that there's absolutely nothing in Ukraine. There's only rubble. Ukraine is a big wasteland. There's no electricity. There's nothing. And finally, when she was able to go to Ukraine, she genuinely looked around surprised and said, "But I thought there was nothing here. I thought I've been made to believe that there's nothing here." Another shocking thing is when there are children living in Russia and occupied territories with their parents. Children are being effectively turned into spies against their own parents, because at school there's this big element of teachers being respected, teachers having a lot of authority, and teachers are to be listened to. And when a child hears at home that Ukraine is a real place that exists, and then they go to school and hear Ukraine is not a place and Ukraine is not a real separate entity, there's no such thing as Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
They go home and tell their parents things like, "My teacher told me there's no such thing as Ukraine." And at that point, the parents have a choice. They can either correct the child, teach them the reality of the situation, that Ukraine is absolutely a place, it exists, it is a separate country. But at that point, they risk that the child will go to school again and say, "But teacher, my parents told me that Ukraine does exist." At which point, again, the parents will be visited by
Yeah.
very unruly people and asked questions or more. And the alternative is for the parents to basically be quiet about it, and this erodes the trust between children and their parents.
Well,
So
and
that is one shocking thing.
I know you know this, and I do want to hear more, but I want to interrupt here because this is a topic that I care about quite deeply for a number of reasons, which is the book 1984. 1984 is a seminal work for so many reasons and important for so many reasons. But one of them is it shows you what the Soviet mindset, especially under Stalin, was. It's the book isn't fiction. It was mirrored after that and fictionalized, very much like Animal Farm. You could sit there and say Animal Farm is fiction. Well, of course it is. The pigs don't talk, horses don't. But it's all based on very real things that were happening.
Dynamics, yeah.
In 1984, the situation you described is actually one of the most terrifying situations in the book, which is the parents that Winston's going by an apartment, and the parents are terrified of the children. It reminds me of that Twilight Zone episode where this girl has unlimited God powers, and her parents, her brother, everybody's terrified of her because every little tantrum, and she could just wipe somebody from existence. And the kids who are not, their brains are not developed, their children have enormous power, disproportionate power in the home, and the reason is all they have to do is report you to the secret police, and they could do it just because they're interested in rising politically themselves. They could do it because they're angry with you. They could do it for any reason, but if they report
Or
you,
they could just know it, unknowingly, by being curious as to why what they hear from their parents differs from what they hear from their teachers.
Yep. So you were describing that, and it's one of the most terrifying scenes in the book, where the family unit is absolutely destroyed because the teachers, if the teachers find out that you are not engaged in orthodox thinking, they can turn you in, and it's. Anyways, I never missed the opportunity to draw a parallel to 1984. Anyways, so you were saying things that you had learned that were surprising. That was one of them.
One of the also shocking things was during my first interview with 𝐒𝐨𝐿_Ukraine, I heard some really shocking, I guess, and disturbing stories of the children themselves. One such story was a very young boy who was living with his father in Russia. And I'm not sure, I think it was closer to the actual front lines, because or occupied territories, actually. Because the child's father would be taken to the basement, that's the euphemism, and beaten regularly, and he would return home to the boy all bruised up and beaten. And in order to go anywhere, the boy would have to actually go. This was described to me pretty vividly, to go outside, and the boy would have to basically go around dead bodies of soldiers to go anywhere where he was outside.
Jesus.
And for a very little child, that sort of thing is, you can imagine, quite traumatic. When the child was rescued, brought to Ukraine, he would not speak. He would wet himself for about 2 months, and only through very meticulous therapy he would be able to get out of that state. So that's one of the most shocking stories that I've heard.
Right. Johnny Negregard, 22 Norwegian kroner. Hello, time travelers. Slava Ukrainie, Heroyam Slava. Spasibo Bolshoye. Thank you so much for the super chat and your continued support, Johnny. We really do appreciate it. Russia has been ordered to return all the children. As you pointed out, there's actually really no way to do that. They could certainly return a number of them that they appear to have made no significant effort. They have returned some.
There's been a very infamous exchange between the Ukrainian and Russian side during one of the peace negotiations. I think there was a demand of, was it 50 children to return them? By the Ukrainian side, or 40 something children?
For that exchange, yeah.
Yeah, and Russia said that they could discuss returning a few of them, and added that Ukraine should not try to appeal to old, childless European ladies with that sort of talk. So that is Russia's attitude when it comes to returning the children. They have no intention to do so, and I am very worried that as much as for Ukraine, not returning the children might be a deal breaker, I'm afraid that the other parties involved might not see it that way, especially people like Donald Trump.
Well, and to wit, there's been a number of right-wing media outlets that have said, well, Russia has returned most of the children. In fact, Russia has returned about 1,000 total, just over 1,000. I think it's 1,200 total, which represents at a minimum about 5% of what they've taken. At a minimum, at the just sort of best estimates, it's less than 5% of what they've taken that have been returned. And I think returned is being used very broadly here. It includes kids that they didn't really take, so that were maybe in custody as lines moved, and instead of kidnapping and taking them back, they return them and say, we have now returned a child to you. It's one they didn't take. So those numbers are, but in the US, there is a growing consensus, including Donald Trump, that, well, Russia's really returned these kids. And so that's, I wanted to. So
that is horrifying, actually. That is horrifying. And, well, there are Ukrainian organizations that are, of course, actively trying to rescue those children on their own. The children contact the organization via various social media and other means, and then the meticulous and difficult rescue operation begins with various secret methods for the child to meet up with the people that will move them across the border. There are two routes, as far as I understand. One, which is the official route of gathering the documents, getting stuff done through the Russian government, and retrieving the children through the official Russian border. And the other method, which actually involves taking the children through the border that is much closer to the front line where the danger lurks. I actually really wanted to go near the front line to witness such a rescue operation, but that is something that is not easy to organize. Apparently in the past, there was a bus of children near the border and the front line that was rescued, and they were en route to safety and they were hit by a drone. So
we've had a number of frontline combatants on this show, and it's a very difficult. Yeah, and journalists. Yes, we have. We won't name any. We have some that we may have had recently, and we had emblazoned on. Yeah. All right. You know what? You're a guest here. I'm just reminding you. Make one mistake, screw up one name, do a little misgendering.
See, Dylan, it's all the same.
Exactly. You can see how someone could make that mistake. Yeah.
The long hair. Long hair.
Yeah. I don't see why people are like, okay, I don't see why people give me such a hard time about this. It's like, this is still a professional operation. It really is.
Yeah. The only difference between us is that I haven't gone to the front line.
So, and the only difference between us and, say, 60 Minutes is we haven't bribed the president with $60 million. Anyways, I couldn't help it.
If you bribe Donald Trump $60 million, I'm going to be a little upset.
I would imagine.
Just give him an expensive plane.
Yeah, I'll just call the Qataris and say, listen, can you order up a second one of those planes or just those? I'm sure actually I'd much rather have that golden McDonald's truck that just followed him around. It was part of the presidential convoy while he was in Qatar. Was the McDonald's truck? We had a picture of that. That was insane. That was insane. So I did want to point out to everyone as Andring is here, but out in the desert, has some connection issues. I'm not sure if you've heard enough or you feel like you confident that there is a question you could or would want to ask. I want to make sure you get the opportunity, but I'm aware that you really have not been able to hear the full show. So if you had anything you wanted to ask, I want to give you the opportunity while you hopefully still can.
Yeah, you would think that if you had given me any kind of notice about we were doing a show and what time it was going to be and what it was going to be about, that I would have made because I'm a consummate professional, I would have totally gotten to an area where I had decent coverage instead of being out in the middle of the red desert, the Mojave.
Mojave.
That I would I wouldn't be wandering around in the desert. At least it shouldn't hopefully take me 40 days to figure out how to get out. So Google Maps is a wonderful thing. So yeah, all, I blame you. So
you blame but I did tell you. Oh my God, I can't believe I'm gonna have to show receipts. I'm gonna have to okay. This things just got. And by the way, it was 40. First of all, it was 40 years. Second of all, it was 40 years to go a distance you could walk in 13 days. And to correct Titan, Nick does not give notice to anyone. That is not true. Everybody saw when I gave Titan notice of a show that the show was starting. And everybody saw that because I gave them that notice about 30 minutes after the show had started. But they saw me do it. So there was absolute proof. I gave him notice, and I really did. I sent him the notice, and he.
To be fair, I've been given notice.
He was. You see, Dylan got. Lucy got notice.
Okay, so well, you stick to your story. I'll stick to mine.
Okay.
With listening to some of the issues, it's like we got a real life, Underground Railroad going on, trying to rescue children that have been, abducted and are now being indoctrinated to and manipulated to essentially hate or question their origins and not want to go back, which unfortunately is a fairly easy thing to do with children, especially because they're trying to fit in as well and they don't want to be outcast. Yeah. So we're talking about very weighty subjects, and then being out in the desert, California does weird things with truck speed limits, so I'm not legally able to go the speed all the other cars are, but I have to be able to pass people. And somebody is so petty that they flip me off. It's like I'm listening about a real life underground tragedy that's going on in the other part of the world, and somebody is so butthurt that they had to wait 30 seconds to get around me, that they're going to flip me off. It's like doing this show has definitely put kind of the world in perspective.
Yes. I mean, the part about peer pressure, the need to fit in is definitely true. That is definitely a part of, if you do not speak Russian, if you speak Ukrainian, you're treated worse, you are being laughed at, and basically you are being made to believe that this life is the only one that you have left. There is no going back till your parents have abandoned you, they don't need you, or are gone. So yeah, that definitely, and there's the element of, yes?
I was to say, what are the success levels? You mentioned the two different pathways for trying to get children back. What are like the percentages? I hate to say percentages, but what kind of success level is each strategy achieving? Is it like very difficult and they're only getting a few, or are they getting more? Which way seems to be work better?
As far as I understand, a couple of hundred of children has been rescued by Save Ukraine. I would need to check the actual number they say, but it's difficult because it all has to be done in absolute secrecy. It's like a spy movie. Like the elements that I've been told is basically, hey, go to this tree by this bench, and then you will receive instructions to go there, and therein you will have a contact and do this, and then you'll be able to be rescued. Because
And
obviously this is a very delicate and secretive operation, being whisked away from a country where you've been adopted into a whole new family and you're being made to start a brand new life. And of
well,
course, it all depends on the age of the child. If they can pull it, like there at certain age, the children have a pretty solid idea of who they are, what their real name is, their identity. But at a younger age, it's much easier to mold them into a completely new persona without them even realizing it.
well, and it's
So what
at
kind
least.
of, go ahead.
That was, at least as far as Russia's concerned, it's kidnapping, and I suspect Russia does not take that very lightly. And you also do want to be careful that you got the right kid, because if you got the wrong kid, it is kidnapping.
Yes.
And you don't want to become what
Well,
you've
usually
beheld.
the children, that's the thing. Usually the children contact the organization themselves.
Okay.
That's how the system works. They are, hey,
Well, I
I'm
would imagine
here. Yeah.
I would imagine there's also, trying to do more clandestine means to try and get children back is also a way for, propaganda to be put in to discredit those kinds of efforts as well. It's like, oh, look at all the underhanded things. They're literally trying to kidnap our
Yeah.
children. So I imagine that makes things a little bit more difficult as well from the, propaganda side.
Yeah.
How much, what kind of support structures are in place for the parents in Ukraine that are trying to get their children back? Is there a lot of group support for the parents in Ukraine, or is it getting
Yes.
a little overshadowed possibly by frontline activity with just the war in general?
The organization I've mentioned, Save Ukraine, they actually, because there are situations that enters a whole different subject that I have not even touched yet on this show. That subject of the foster care system in Ukraine that Save Ukraine, the organization, for example, hates with a passion. It is said that because of the inaction and indecisiveness of the headmasters of said orphanages, the children have not been sent out deeper into Ukraine, and therefore Russia was able to easier kidnap them because they were waiting for instructions from the government instead of taking decisive action themselves. And Save Ukraine actually, from what I've talked to them, have said that they actually, one of their stated goals is to dismantle the Ukrainian foster care children and to make sure that all the children just get a family without being stuck in that system. And to sort of get into it more, the support system is actually quite robust, at least when it comes to Save Ukraine, because there are children that have found themselves in the foster system not because they're children, but for example, because their parents have had a very difficult financial situations. They could not take care of them, or the parents had problems with alcohol, problems with psychological problems. And Save Ukraine actually takes those prior situations and, upon rescuing the children, offer the parents themselves psychological help or help in finding a job, helping finding housing. The families are actually offered temporary housing. They're not fancy houses. They are those little areas where you have a series of little wooden barracks, I guess, little houses in which the families live for a few months at least, where the children receive um, mental health care, therapy, and many other things that they need after being kidnapped. And the parents themselves receive a lot of support. And of course, there are situations because, as we've discussed, there are two ways of rescuing the children. And one of the ways is that the organization prepares the parent themselves to go to Russia and retrieve the child themselves, because Russia often says, if you want the child back, the parent has to go there themselves and retrieve them.
I'm amazed that they even permit any of that. I suspect that that's a small number
They
that
put
successfully.
roadblocks. They definitely
Yeah.
put roadblocks.
So, all right. Before I have, I would like you to talk about the organizations that you've been working with. But before we do that, was there anything that you wanted to talk about that we have not hit on yet? Because I want to make sure that we've hit all the important areas.
I guess I wanted to talk about the fact that my scope has broadened a little bit ever since I started covering the topic of children, and that is, I started with the kidnapped children, and then it broadened into Ukrainian children just affected by this war in general, like how they cope with the war. There's the second organization that I have started working with. It is called the Voices of Children, and they just offer free psychological help to children whose families just cannot afford to grant them such help, and that has been pretty enlightening as well. When I went to Kharkiv, we went to a village near Kharkiv where the Voices of Children organizes group sessions for children that have been affected by war, so that they can get away from it for a bit and find a safe place to play, have therapy one-on-one if needed. I've had quite a few interesting conversations with parents and children who underwent a lot of trauma due to losing friends, experiencing bombing in very close proximity, and then doing therapy work to overcome that.
And we've got Blonde Bombsheller gifted 10 in-time memberships. Blonde Bombsheller, also another supporter of the channel. Thank you very much, Blonde Bombsheller, for those memberships. We really do appreciate it, and it does help a lot. So thank you for that.
No message.
I had it was just it was gifted 10 memberships. We don't allow her to super chat messages because they're usually like phenomenally insulting towards one of the hosts. I won't say which one, but I don't know why. There's just like, some hosts seem to draw more fire than others. So with that, please do send me a list of the organizations that you've got, and I will put it in the description that you work with, and I will put information.
Is that okay if I do it after?
Yeah. It doesn't have to be done right now. Do it as soon as we're done.
I primarily worked with two, but I might start working with another. Anastasia told me that there's a really good organization in Kharkiv. She actually saved them from bankruptcy. They were getting very close to having to close up, but she was able to help them with getting the finance to stay afloat, which is a great thing. And I believe their name is Dusha Kharkiv, Dusha Kharkiv, which means the soul of Kharkiv. Kharkiv, yeah. So Dusha means soul in Slavic languages, I should say, because it's the same in Polish.
All right, we will definitely put the link for that in the description. And then what's the other organization you're working with?
I'm working with Save Ukraine. They rescue children from Russian occupied territories. It is a pretty famous organization. And then there's a little bit less known 𝐒𝐚𝐬. It's the Voices of Children. They organize mental health care assistance to children affected by war.
And could you tell us a little bit about your channel? We're dropping the link, and the link is in the description, but tell us a bit about it and what people can find there.
Well, I'm 𝐒𝐚𝐬𝐻. I am, even though I am technically speaking a micro streamer, I'm still the biggest Polish trans Jewish content creator, political content creator. I discuss the news. I usually discuss the war, some Polish politics, like I've discussed the Polish presidential election recently, which will have its own ramifications. It will have its own it's all messy and complicated. I do history. I'm a little bit of a history nerd. I especially like to focus on the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth period, which is when the union between the Kingdom of Poland and the Great Duchy of Lithuania. Ukraine was also part of that in a also quite a complicated way. It's always all very complicated. And I also do gaming because streamers have to do gaming. And languages much more rarely. And art.
Well,
I also am a little bit of an artist. I draw.
and you've been on before, and we've certainly appreciated your extensive history knowledge. I think we had you on with Commander, and you held your own with him, which is hard to do when it comes to military history. So kudos. Lucy, thank you very much for joining us and for explaining the situation to us. It's not covered as much as it should be, and again, it's not easy to talk about.
I'm very, very happy to have been invited, as the Burns family must, be propagated.
Oh God. I should have just kept my mouth shut about that one. I'm learning in life that I am the cause of 90% of my own woes. I am my own worst enemy. Before we go, actually,
I might need to, yeah.
I do have one.
To rebrand to Lucy Burns, I guess.
Lucy Burns. I do want to ask you one question, because this was something we touched on briefly in the green room, and I had mentioned at the beginning, which is how hard this can be. These kinds of shows aren't necessarily very popular. It's because they're downers, and nobody wants to. But they're extraordinarily important. You've been interviewing these people. You've been talking to people who work in the recovery of children, and in a field where, because of what we've just talked about, and we've gone over it, the success rates are going to be low no matter what you do. You're going to have some success.
It's going to be difficult,
Yeah. So how do you keep sane when you hear these stories? How do you keep yourself motivated and going forward when you get steeped in this 24/7?
Well, I guess I'm motivated because it reminds me of my family story, of my grandfather being kidnapped when he was a child, when he and my great grandfather were taken to a German camp, when my great grandfather died, and then my grandfather was taken to a German family. So it sort of resonates with me, the story of children being kidnapped, stripped of their identity, and I just think it's important. I'm trying to raise funds to go back there again, of course. And you touch upon some topics which will be a little bit more difficult to do. One of the more difficult stories I've heard about, again, from a psychologist, because I, of course, interview psychologists as well, was a girl that was walking in the territory that was occupied and just dragged into an alley by a bunch of soldiers, drugged and then sexually assaulted. And there are many, many stories like that, it's a topic that I think should be talked about, but it is not easy to discuss, to get to a place of discussing these things. So, because there's a lot of trauma involved. So I believe the most I will be able to do is to discuss the cases with the psychologist.
All right. Well, I think it's extraordinarily important work. I'm glad you reached out to us about it. So, because you contacted me, and again, you've been on before, so it wasn't like a shock. Yeah. It was nice to hear, and I'm glad that we could do the show. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you to everyone who has supported the stream, to everyone who has become a member, and to our patrons. You guys are what keep us going, and hopefully we can bring you more shows like this in the future. Thank you to 𝐒𝐨𝐿𝐴𝐻, who made a concerted effort to be here. Sometimes it's easy. Yeah, he's as you may recall, he's a trucker. If he happens to be in a city, he's all good. If he happens to be out in the Mojave, which he is sometimes, good luck. So, definitely always important, I think, to have him here as well. Our next scheduled show is Thursday. It will be downtime with Commander Lance McMillan. However, we're trying to get special guests with us. Hopefully we can get them. I've been chatting with them. They don't know if they're free yet. We're going to figure it out. We may move the time. We may move the time, Titan. I gotta watch
It
the
could be
attitude.
good to get more, and I'm gonna leave it vague as to what it means. But it could be good
Yeah.
to have more Dylan on.
So it's not Dylan. Oh,
It'd be great to have more Dylan on.
All right. We get it. We need a new producer. I understand.
But it could be good to have more actual Dylan on.
Yes, it could. It would be. We got to get Dylan back on too. So, all right. So, thank you all for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern for downtime or any breaking news, which I wouldn't shock me if there wasn't breaking news like right now, and we'll be breaking live in 30 seconds. It's happened before.
Shooting nukes.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. Submarines to redeploy. Oh my God. When will it end? Thank you all for joining us, and we will see you Thursday. Have a good night.
All right. Well, what do I do now?
Just hang on a sec.